Brandon Rose is out for the season. Kyle Whittingham announced it yesterday. Utah will be going back to Isaac Wilson, and it comes against a surging Colorado Buffaloes team. What does Utah do post Brandon Rose? Can Utah contain one of the best teams currently in college football, top 20 team in Colorado? We're talking about it, as well as asking a former Utah defensive back what his thoughts were on the PI call. That's coming up on today's Locked On Utes.
You are Locked On Utes, your daily podcast on the Utah Utes. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, everyone, and thank you for making Locked On Utes your first listen and view of the day. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network. If this is your first time tuning into our show, make sure you like and subscribe. Love interacting with all of you in the YouTube comments as well as on social media, where you can follow our show at Locked On Utes on X. Today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by Game Time. You can download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code Locked On College. Just all caps, no spaces. Locked On College for $20 off your first purchase today. My name is JT Wistrcill, former intern inside the University of Utah Athletics Department. Excited to be joined by former Utah defensive back on the 2019 Utah team, Josh Nurse. And Josh was at the game this weekend, so really excited to get your thoughts on that. And we're going to talk about the Buffs in a moment. But Josh, we got to start with the breaking news earlier today. Steve Bartle reported that Brandon Rose is indeed done for the season. He led Utah's offense to some brief success against BYU. 12 for 21 overall, 112 yards, 2 touchdowns, and interception. This really hurts because you are, like I said, playing a good Colorado team. Brandon Rose right now was this team's best option to win moving forward. His ability to tuck in and run, I thought were really key. He's better at that than Isaac Wilson is, and he was just playing better football. So it's really hard to not only lose Brant Keithy earlier in the week, but now Brandon Rose as well.
Yeah, absolutely, man. I hate that for him. Injuries like that, they take a lot of time to come back from. So it's a long recovery process. And like you said, he was the best option moving forward because, watching him in the first half, I'm like, okay, yeah, he can get out of there. I like his how quick he was to make a decision to get out of there, to get out of the pocket. So I hate that, he got injured and that he can't, he's gonna miss the rest of the games moving forward. It's tough. But like Coach Witt always says, next man up. I think what Utah needs to do, with Zach Wilson is go back.
Isaac,
Isaac. Oh my God, I keep getting them mixed up.
No, hey, with what you did in 2019, you got good. You beat BYU. You got good graces. You can make that mistake.
Yeah, absolutely. But I think they need to take go back to the games where he was successful and take a look at what he did well. And then just kind of hone in on that, figure out what they could tweak, what they could do differently, how they could, make things look differently, but still keep it simple for him. And I think that's kind of how, Utah will have, some sort of success kind of, with these last 3 games left.
I agree, but it does not get easy this week. I originally thought the toughest game remaining on Utah's schedule was going to be Iowa State, but as the Cyclones have stumbled, the Buffs have started to soar. Coach Prime, Deion Sanders, has got that team rolling. They are 7-2. Their only loss outside of the loss to Kansas State, what was the Nebraska one earlier in the season, and even the loss against Kansas State, right? That was 31-28. They've won 7 of their last 8. They've won their last 3 games by 11 or more. Shedeur Sanders, Colorado's quarterback, for my money right now, would be the number 1 pick in the NFL draft. I think he's playing exceptionally well. He's thrown for 2,882 yards. That's 6th in the nation. Last week, I brought up how Jake Retzloff had never thrown for 250 yards against a Power 4 team in the season. Shedeur's done that in every single game but one, when he had 244 yards against a Power 4 team too. So he's absolutely balling right now. We'll get to some of the weapons, and obviously they got a guy who we'll talk about in a moment. And Travis, you know his name. He's dangerous, but I really think slowing down Shedeur Sanders is where it starts for Utah, and that is a lot easier said than done.
Yeah, absolutely. Shedeur is everything, that everybody is seeing. You know what I mean? He's putting it on tape. He's consistent. I think what you do with Shedeur, I think where he struggles at is kind of improvising, once the pocket breaks down. Now, he does have enough in him to get the job done, but I think what they need to do is find a way to flush him. Because I think we have athletic enough players, in Karina Reed. I think they'll easily track him down for sure. I would like to think the BYU quarterback was a lot more better mobily than Shedeur is. You know, I actually like the BYU quarterback. He can throw the ball,
Mm-hmm.
but I think that's what they do. You know, that's obviously, like you said, easier said than done, but that's, to me, that's the recipe. Like, you figure out a way to get him uncomfortable, and that's how you can at least deal with one problem
Mm-hmm.
with taking down Colorado.
Yeah, because there are several. And to your point, though, that's the one thing about Shedeur. He's really good, but he is not the most elusive. He's not Kyler Murray going to run around and buy time all day, right? That's not his
Mhm.
game. He is mobile, as you said, capable of doing things, but not super mobile. So he's been sacked 28 times on the year, 3 times against Texas Tech. So Utah coming off a 3-sack performance against BYU, that could bode well for Utah. Run game is just They don't have a back over 400 yards. The O-line is not great, but they actually are playing better as the season's gone on. They got a true freshman left tackle, so that's a position where grown over the course. But while their run game is fine, their receiving core is not just one of the best in the Big 12. I think it probably is. It's one of the best in college football. And of course, it's led by Travis Hunter.
Right.
806 receiving yards, 9 touchdowns. But of course, the reason he's a Heisman contender is the fact that he goes both ways. And he is a special playmaker. Josh, what do you think about Travis? How does Utah try to tire him out? And as a former defensive back, just how impressive is it that he goes both ways?
Man, I've been watching Travis since he was at Collins Hill. You know, Collins Hill is out here
Mhm.
in Atlanta, so it's just it's amazing. You know, because obviously, you know, you got people who do it in high school because you know that's very common, but to do it at the Division 1 level, you know, Power Five, and to be consistent. You know what I mean? It's one thing to actually, you know, just do it, but for him to be consistent and as productive as he is nothing short of amazing. Like, I truly believe he is the best athlete, just
Mhm.
pure athlete in the whole entire nation. Like, out of every single college football team is Travis Hunter without question.
Yeah, he's unreal. And Utah is going to have to try to wear him out on both sides of the ball, and they really got to tackle. And Josh, this is something I wanted to ask you
Yes.
too about. Like, you're playing Shedeur Sanders, you're playing a guy
Hmm.
like Travis Hunter who can break off of tackles. This is a Utah team that plays a lot of man, so you're going to give up some NFL throws. I'm concerned because Shedeur can make those NFL throws at an incredibly high level.
Yeah, like, should, you know, like I said, Shedeur is putting it on tape. You know, he can make
Mm-hmm.
all the throws. He can, the short throws, deep throws, you know, everything. He can make it all.
Having seen Utah's DBs in person, how do you feel about them matching up with Colorado's receivers and just Shedeur?
It's doable. You know, I
Okay.
believe it's doable. You know, I really feel like this is one of those games where you have to be on your P's and Q's though. You have to really, it's gotta be one of those games where it's like you gotta have a game of your life. Like, you gotta be so locked
Mm-hmm.
in that, you know, you can't mess up. You know, every I feel like every DB has a game like that. And for you know, either one of those corners, I like out of Cameron Calhoun and Zamaiah Vaughn, this is gonna be one of those games for them where they have to, no mistakes, good technique, good eyes, good feet, every single play for full 60 minutes. Full 60 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
That's how you compete with Travis Hunter. Cause, you know, obviously Travis Hunter is one of those athletes, like, he's gonna make plays.
Mm-hmm.
It's just how are these DBs gonna respond when he does make plays? Are they gonna, you know, give up multiple chunk plays, or maybe they give up one chunk play and come back and get an interception? That's what they have to do in order to stifle this Colorado offense.
And this Utah defense has been really good. I mean,
Yeah.
among Power Four teams, they rank ninth in total points given up on in points per game given up on the season. 17 points per game given up. That's ninth best in the country. And that's where obviously the offensive struggles have led to this team's rough turn it's taken on their season as they've nosedived on a 5-game losing streak than what
Hmm.
the offense has done. Really quick on the Buffs defense, 68th best defense in terms of total yards at 367 per game, but they have held their last 3 opponents under 30. Utah hasn't cracked 30 in a long time. It was Utah State the last time. And unfortunately, Josh, I even look and I go, well, we did see Wilson move the ball against Oklahoma State. And
Hmm.
while that leaves me a little encouraged, I looked today at a stat that really made me sad. Oklahoma State is the second worst FBS defense in the country in terms of total yards. Only Kent State is worst. So that does not give me the most confidence about like, well, at least we can pull from this one game of, oh, that was against this bad of a defense. So, and Colorado's defense has been doing some better things as of late too. It's going to be a fun matchup this weekend. It's big noon kickoff, the national spotlight. I know it's a little early, 10 a.m., but I love having it on big noon kickoff, the bigger spotlight, even in a year where Utah's not great. Still always great to have a big game. You get Joel Klatt, Gus Johnson. Joel Klatt, the guy who always says death taxes in Utah football too. So I think it'll still be fun to see how this team performs. But before we fully shift our focus to that game, and we just did for 10 minutes, but since Josh is on, he's a former Utah defensive back. It's been all the rage. Was it a holding call on Zamaiah Vaughn? Josh was there in person. I'm excited to get Josh's thoughts on the big call in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our friends at Game Time. Game Time is your place to find the picks for the events that you want to go to, whether it's sports, theater, concert, or comedy events near you. Game Time has you covered. Game Picks filters out the fluff to show you only incredible deals on great seats, so you don't have to waste time searching through thousands of tickets. I love Game Time because it saves me time. Game Picks is a curation that makes it easier to save more on sports and all of your other ticketing needs, such as concert, comedy, and theater events. It's also the panoramic view you can get in the app before you buy your seat, so you know exactly what kind of a deal you're getting. What's it going to look like in the seats you purchase? Game Time provides that. There's also that low price guarantee where Game Time will credit you 110% of the difference. Game Time ticket coverage is also provided, which is your purchase is covered with the most flexible customer service policy in the ticketing industry. You can truly take the guesswork out of buying tickets with Game Picks. Download the Game Time app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONCollege, capital L for locked, O for on, C for college. All one word, no spaces, for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, create an account and redeem code LOCKEDONCOLLEGE for $20 off. Download Game Time today. What time is it? Game time. The call heard. Oh, we got to get Josh back in here. The call heard around the world, Josh. Zamaiah Vaughn late in the game, 4th down. BYU's got to go for it, backed up in their own end zone. Corene Reed has a sack. No, he doesn't. Flag on Zamaiah Vaughn. As a former defensive back, as someone who saw it in person, I believe we said before we were recording, you were even close by the play. How did you view it?
I'm standing right there, literally on the 10-yard line, and it happened right in front of me. You absolutely cannot call that. Like, it's too the situation. One, time left in the game, the magnitude of the game, and not only that, most importantly, it's a physical game. You know, it's a rivalry game. Like I watched it. I actually even recorded it on my phone. Like, there's no way that's a flag. You can't call that. Like, that's classic hand fighting between receivers and DBs to get open. Like, Zamaiah is not supposed to just let the receiver do whatever he wants to do. Now, granted, he's not supposed to impede him running a route, but if the receiver is trying to be physical back, you know, he has the right to be physical as well, you know. So to me, that's not a flag. It's not a flag at all. It's just classic hand fighting within the first 5 yards. And then not only that, another major issue I have with the call is the flag wasn't thrown as soon as the so-say holding occurred. The flag was thrown after the sack. Everyone's celebrating, everything's going crazy. That's why it took so long for it to register that it was actually a flag, because it's just like, who threw a flag? And I don't see that. I don't see how he called that in that moment. I hate that. It's quite ridiculous, honestly.
Yeah, and your frustration's been echoed by a lot of Utah fans. The more I've watched the play, the more I can understand in terms of, look, he did reach across and grab his shoulder with a little bit of a tug, but I do agree with what you said, Josh. I don't think it was enough in that moment for it to decide a game. And that's where I wish it would not have been called, because I do think you could call something similar to that contact so frequently. I understand why it was called. It's one of those things that can go either way, I feel like, and unfortunately it went against Utah. But the one that still drives me the most crazy, Josh, the holding on Landon King. Do you remember that on the final drive? The final offensive drive. That's the one to me where he hits him. He doesn't grab him in the chest. It's just his hand is in a place that it looks guilty, like when your hand is there and there's nothing else there, but he doesn't actually grab.
Right.
And we talked about Zamaiah Vaughn not impeding. Landon King did even less. And I felt
Right.
like that was an incredibly soft call, just in similar to how the Zamaiah Vaughn one, there's a level of softness to it, but even another level when we're talking about the Landon King one. And I don't feel like that's where the officials should have input their fingerprints on the game, because you got to let the players play. So that for me
Right.
was the one that was really frustrating. How'd you see that one?
Right. To me, it's the exact same thing. Like you just absolutely can't call that. Like if that jersey doesn't come off of the
Mm-hmm.
actual pads itself, that's not holding.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not that when there's restriction and I can see that he's fighting to go the other
Yes.
direction and that then there's holding. But if it's just classic people, slapping hands and fighting and stumbling to run and get down the field, or in Landon King's, I'm trying to get my hands into position, you can't call that. You have to let
Mm-hmm.
them play. And it sucks that it was just in crucial moments of the game. If those two calls happen in the middle of the second quarter, they obviously wouldn't mean
Mm-hmm.
as much versus, those very two crucial moments in the game. To me, the referees, I don't know. I don't know, man. You could say it's human error, but to me, that's just insane.
Yeah, I guess I'm with you. I don't like them taking control of the game. That's where I wish they would have let it go, wish they let it play. I can understand the Zamaiah Vaughn one a little bit more just because of the tug. But as you said, I feel like we could call something similar to that
Right,
almost every play. And that's where
right.
I really don't like it. But Josh, obviously Utah still had chances to win this game
Yes,
earlier. They
they
didn't
did.
score in the second half. So I want to ask you, after that fun fever dream of a second quarter, we have 3 touchdown drives, we put 21 points. What happened to this offense in the second half?
I have no idea. I really can't tell you. Like, to you can't score 21 points in the first
Mhm.
half and then go scoreless the second half. Like, you can't win a
Yep.
game like that. It's just
Nope.
it's not sustainable. You know what I mean? I feel like, even when we were in the Pac-12, like, you have to be able to at least put 30 points on the board,
Mhm.
on average for me. So, you know, seeing Utah's offense kind of stifle like that is definitely kind of disappointing because it puts a lot of pressure on the defense because the defense is on the field more, and you're only going to stop a team so much, after being on the field so much. So I feel like they got another chance to get back on track. With Colorado, each week is a new week. It's a new
Mhm.
test. Could get different results, and I think they can get back on track. There's always opportunity to get back on track. I've
Mhm.
been in a season like this before my first year at Utah, where we went 7-6 and played in the heart of
Mhm.
Dallas Bowl and stuff like that. So they still got a chance to get back on track. It's really up to them though to want it, because I know 5 weeks in a row of losing can be very disheartening.
Very tough. And as the injuries continue to amount to, it was so tough to see the offense go through what it went through. And that falls on everyone. That falls on play calling. There were missed throws. There was the interception. We were told that Landon King ran the wrong route on, right? So there is all over the place. When every single drive ends in a failure in the second half, as in failure is in, you don't score points, falls on
Hmm.
everyone. And something's got
Right.
to change against Colorado. Josh, you mentioned it. A lot of pressure was put on the defense because the offense failed to finish this drive in the second half. To you,
Right.
what was the biggest thing that went wrong after the penalties called? BYU still had to march the field. They were able to do so, get in field goal range. Why do you think that we finally saw the Cougars offense click late?
I think the
And
momentum.
really quick, and I think you're about to bring it up anyways. How much of that is a thing? We hear about momentum. We hear about like, oh, when this call went our way, like, it's just kind of like everything kind of went their way. How real
Mhm.
is that in the huddle when you're in a game, when you have something as big as a fourth down sack to win the game against your rival yanked away from you?
Uh, as a player, you try not to let it get too big because obviously you don't want any moment to be too big for
Mm-hmm.
you. But when something like that, something of that magnitude happens, and then they get a fresh set of downs, now you're thinking about like, okay, like they got three more chances now to attack us. Like now I have to basically figure out how to stop them now again. But the stop that just got discredited for, you feel like, man, we really earned that. And like how could you call something like that? We played three good downs. This is the final down, and then we make the play, and then all of a sudden you make a call like that. It's tough. It's tough not to think about because you can't think about it in that moment. But when you're looking at it in hindsight, it upsets you. It can
Yeah.
upset you. It's like, man, what? Like, it's I don't know, man. It's tough. That's tough. Like, it's tough as a player. That's tough. When that's the final result, that's tough.
Mhm.
Hmm.
It is. And that's where we said earlier, give credit to Jake Retzloff and BYU for making those plays.
Yeah,
People can say what they want about the Cougars, but at the end of the day, they're undefeated because they have made the big plays late, and got to give
right.
BYU credit for that, even as frustrating as it is when it happens against Utah. And speaking of those frustrations, I mean, they just continue to mount. This team has lost 5 games in a row. So what's next going in to the Colorado game? You see Iowa State shortly after that. Sure, they've stumbled a few in a row, but there was a reason they were a top 15 team. Then you got to go cross country to UCF without some key players. Where does this team go from here right now and even a little bit in the future? We're going to talk about that with Josh in one moment. But first, today's episode of Locked On Utes is brought to you by our great friends at FanDuel Sportsbook. At FanDuel, it's your place to get all of your sports betting needs. Get ready to tackle the NFL action with FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. Because right now, new customers can bet $5, get 150 in bonus bets if you win. The FanDuel Sportsbook app gives you everything you need to place live bets on the NFL all in one place. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more. On the same page where you place your bets, you can just visit FanDuel.com to join today. You'll get started with $150 in bonus bets if you win your first $5 bet. That's FanDuel.com. Never waste a hunch and make every moment more with FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Speaking of the NFL, we got a great Thursday night game coming up this week. We're going to see the Philadelphia Eagles take on the Washington Commanders, two of the best teams in the NFC, and there's tons of other fun NFL action going on. Utah versus Colorado is just one of the marquee college football games this weekend. NHL, NBA, you name it, FanDuel has you covered. Make sure you head over to FanDuel today. FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. All right, Josh, closing this one out, I want to know your thoughts about being at the game. And first, we're going to talk about the game day experience and seeing the fans and everyone there in a moment. But I really first want to know, like, just being around this team before and after the game, what do you think of the current state of Utah football after being up close? You said you were on the sideline. And Josh, with this question too, is one thing I am really curious to get Actually, I'll be honest, I was just stalling because I'd accidentally muted your mic. So now, please, sir, continue.
It's honestly, the team is I won't say like they're broken or anything like
Yeah.
that. 'Cause it'll take a whole lot more than one bad season after all the success we've had to break Utah football. But I definitely feel like they're in a state of like it's a state of like a little bit of like sadness and confusion because a lot of people. You got the offensive players wondering, why some players were wondering why they weren't getting the ball. You had the struggles of losing, not scoring points, people getting injured. You have all of these things that are piling up against this team. And I think, what's necessary for this team is to, muster up, scrape up what you can, you know, everybody, pull their pants up and knock these last 3 games out to at least try and get bowl eligible because that's an experience everybody should experience, and I'm glad I got to experience it each year at my time at
Mhm.
Utah. And and that came from, us mustering up against the adversity and still finding a way to get, wins and enough wins to get into a bowl game. At this point, that's what Utah is competing for. That's the last thing on their list that they can achieve, and I think that's what they should ultimately, muster up all that they have to go for. Regardless, what Isaac Wilson moving forward. You
Mhm.
know, next man up. They still have playmakers. I think they still got the running back 23. Forgot his name. Um,
Well, Mike
but
Mitchell, Mike Mekhi Bernard's still doing his thing.
yeah,
You got
yeah.
Jalen Glover's still going, and
Hmm.
Mike Mitchell also should still be. I think Mike Mitchell's 23. You're referring to.
Okay, yeah, yeah, yeah. But you still have playmakers to come up with some sort of offensive plan. Maybe you
Mhm.
can use all 3 of those guys at the same time.
Might have
you
to.
know you know what I mean. So it's like it's some there's still always room for them to have some sort of success. It doesn't have to all just come all crashing burning down. There's still room for them to make something happen, and I think they should muster up all all of their ability to do that, you know.
After being up close, and it's always hard after a loss like one Utah just suffered to their rival,
Yeah.
where's your confidence level at for this program to bounce back next year?
I like them. I think it's always pretty good. You know, even though, when we have tough years, they just gotta build. You know, I feel like that's what we did when I was here. You know, looking at each season, we progressively got better. So it's just, the guys that are leaving, hopefully they're setting a great example for the guys that's going to be taking over for them when they're leaving, because that's ultimately what keeps the program going is, who sets the standard before you guys and who keeps it going. You
And
know
if
what I mean?
there's one, Josh, if there's one silver lining to a down year, I feel like a lot of these guys are going to come back. Lander Barton's a really good
Yes.
player. He is,
Mm-hmm.
I don't think he's had the year that he was hoping to. Is
Right.
he? I don't see him being right now. I don't see him being a first round NFL draft pick. Does he want to go? Like, I don't know the answer to that question, but there is a lot of good things on this Utah football team, particularly in the defense. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of those pieces may come back because they're NFL draft stock. I think Teo Johnson is one of those guys, right? He's playing really good, but he's struggled with tackling at times too, right? So that's another guy.
Right.
He might come back. And if you're bringing those players back on top of overall, we trust the coaching that is in place. Even
Right.
because people will be like, it's 2 bad years for Utah football in a row. 8-4 last year with the number of injuries you suffered is not a down year,
Yeah, it's
really, in
not
my
bad at
opinion.
all.
Versus this year's a down year for sure. You've lost 5 in a row. But
Right.
I expect this group and this team to bounce back, whether Coach Whittingham steps away or not.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. I think that, and I agree with the same thing. Like, if those guys come back, I feel like that was kind of the situation for us back in 2018. We went 8-4. Zach, that was the same year Zach Moss tore his MCL. Snoop got hurt, and we had Jason Shelley, and somehow we still made it to the Pac-12 championships. That's why I'm not really too worried about Utah football, the program come crumbling down or anything, like, regardless, because that program is rock solid. If I know anything, Utah is rock solid. They've been like that for a long time. So with that, if those guys, talk to each other and agree to come back and try to make something special, like the same way that we did, I can almost guarantee you it'll be a much different look. Everybody stays healthy next year, much different look next year, much different Utah football team.
I agree. I'm not banking on this program to have 2 down years in a row based on their overall track record. And if Cam Rising was healthy and things hadn't gotten hurt, not making excuses, I'm just saying a fact. I don't think this season would have gone as it has. So that's
Yeah.
why I'm not saying, okay, they're going to have a down year once again. But Josh, I want to know last thing. You were back in Salt Lake City, having Utah versus BYU back and having it in Rice-Eccles Stadium. Talk to me about that atmosphere.
This may sound crazy, but I like when we go there.
I can see
Honestly,
that.
yeah.
Why is
Right?
that?
It was pretty nice though. It felt good because I always tell people, this is one of those rivalries. It's one of the best in college football, whether people know it or not. And just hearing the atmosphere, just hearing the noise on third down, it just brought back so many memories because I played in 3 of those, so I'm just like,
Yeah.
man, I wish I could suit up, man. I loved it so much, man. Regardless of the outcome, it was just a wonderful atmosphere. It was, classic Utah versus BYU, the Holy War. Like, I love it. I think that's I think this is underrated, but it's still one of the best rivalries in all of college football.
I totally agree with you there. And while we are talking about the atmosphere, I feel like just something I should bring up is I haven't brought it up yet too. The University of Utah, this was posted by Joe Coles. There was the water bottle that was thrown at the cheerleading coach for BYU, and the 18-year-old who did throw that was arrested on a misdemeanor they did put out. So it was overall a great atmosphere for Utah, but that's where it's so unfortunate that certain fans and people get out of control. And that's why I'm glad the police stepped in and did the right thing, because anytime we're resorting to any type of violence where you're hitting anyone, people are getting hurt, this is supposed to be fun. And that's where it just ruins it completely. So I give the police credit for stepping in there. 99.9% of you Utah fans, you make it a great atmosphere. It's just a couple of those bad apples that always ruin it, unfortunately. But overall, it was great having Utah versus BYU back. I'm excited to have this rivalry back year in and year out. And I'm excited to see what this team can do even this week. Josh, always great having you on. We appreciate you stopping by again. If people want to follow along with you and see what you're up to, where's the head over to?
You can follow me on Instagram at officialjnurse. You can follow me on Twitter or X now as at Uno Quattro J14.
I'm not just saying this because he's come on the show twice. Genuinely, for Utah fans, one of the best follows on X for this Utah football team. Always shares his thoughts, always keeps it honest. That's why I wanted to have him on as soon as I saw him doing it on. So, Josh, you continue to crush it, man. I'm glad you got to go to the game, even if it wasn't the result we wanted to. And always fun talking ball with you, man. Thanks for stopping by.
Most definitely. Thank you.
That's going to do it for today's Locked On Utes. On tomorrow's show, Kevin Borba, Locked On Buffs, joins me. It's a crossover as we're previewing Saturday's big noon matchup. I hope to see you all tomorrow then.